Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday morning, December 28th. Man, it's flying almost end of the year, start of the new year. Love this time of year. A lot of football going on. Whole lot to cover today. Got a great show in store for you. We'll start off with Doug Dean, AU Dose down in Birmingham. He's got some great points, topics of conversation he wants to cover, and we'll get into that right away. Gary Harris, Title 100.9, WVUA TV 23. Tider Insider TV in Tuscaloosa. We're going to get the latest on Alabama and Michigan. Alabama has been out there for a couple of days in Pasadena, had some practices, getting ready for the matchup with Michigan. And we're going to get into that. Doug's going to talk about Michigan's bowl performance, their historical bowl performance. We'll cover that. Second hour, the AD angle, Matt Dean over at Rhodes College in Memphis, John Hartwell, AD at ULM. Will talk with us as well. We do it 6 times a week, 25 times a month, 300 plus days a year. Repetition is the mother of all skill. Catch us live on all social media. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the podcast, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Android, Google, wherever you get your podcast. So catch us live Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, or at your leisure, wherever you want to hear them. Again, the show is put up on YouTube right after we go off the air at 10 a.m. Central. Let's head down to the Magic City, a quick 3-hour and 19-minute drive from Memphis to Birmingham, 2 cities that have a lot in common. They're both big healthcare centers, and they both have UAB, which is now, though, become more and more of a school. It's not as much of a commuter school as it used to be. University of Memphis with Dr. Hargrave, hopefully he's going to follow that example, but you're not going to find many people who are prouder of the Steel City of Birmingham than Doug Dean, the AU Dose. And Doug, love these. I tell you what, when you're ADD and OCD like I am, you thrive on structure. And thank you. Yeah. God bless you for putting the points out there this morning, because I'm ready to get going, and I'm going to go ahead and post your first one up here on the screen. So I see how I did that. Getting a little bit advanced.
There you go. Hey, good morning. Happy New Year to you and Audrey, our illustrious producer, all the guests that have come on this year and made it such a special year for Sidelines Live. And man, if it's not too early to say Happy New Year, and I probably will wait to eat the black-eyed peas and greens, wait till actual New Year's Day. Is that what you do?
Yeah, I mean, we will, but we'll have Savant Saturday. We can have some on Saturday for breakfast.
There you go. Gosh, where did the year go, Rob?
Flies. It flies.
I've said, that's Einstein's theory of relativity. When you're 3 years old, each year perception-wise is 1/3. And I don't want to tell you what the fraction is for me right now, but it goes faster.
They do. It's amazing. And there's so much stuff happening. And if you don't slow down, you're going to miss it. Ferris Bueller.
Well, we spent the better part of the year. I would just thumbnail guess. I bet 30 or 40% of 2023, if you added up the content, the topics, you could put it under the header, making sense of college football chaos. You agree with that,
Yeah.
Rob? 30%?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now we have more chaos. I think much of it will prove to be good chaos, if there's such a thing. Good chaos, good disruption. Sometimes for businesses, organizations, things we love like sport, somebody comes along and invents or innovates, or they just create disruption. And there are aspects of it that's sort of the precursor to something revolutionary coming. But along the way, I think, as you have rightly pointed out, you've said, I don't know how many times this year, let the free market figure this out, straighten it out. It usually does. But we have to understand, if you're going to invent and innovate and try to solve things like the boredom of the bowl season, if we're honest, some of the bowls, not all of them, then there's some a few eggs have to get cracked to make scrambled eggs, right, Rob?
Yeah, you do. And I think that you and I both, we've been to a lot of Christmas parties, cocktail parties lately, and the general consensus is there's something missing. You know, college football's got some. David Aquadro, one of our viewers, listens every day on the Stairmaster at Lifetime Fitness. He said college football is broken. I said, and that's our job to fix it. And I believe 40 years ago we had this same discussion about the bowls. You had bowls with 5,000 and 10,000 people there, like the Liberty Bowl in Memphis. And they had made a deal with the service academies to play like a Big Ten school, and they were beating those schools. But you know, the market fixed it. Now the Liberty Bowl puts close to 60,000 in there. For the last 21 years, they've averaged over 58,000. So somehow we'll figure it out. And look at Birmingham. Look what they've done. I mean, they figured out how to do things because, again, don't get in the way of the free market. That's just what we'll do. But I like your first topic, state of the non-playoff bowl games. That's where we ought to start.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think instead of painting with a like 1 mile wide paintbrush and making ridiculous statements that really don't apply and everything, I think you have to look at each bowl as an entity unto itself, and then inside of that you look at the two teams that are playing, and what you find is that the enthusiasm level is all over the board. I think, for example, in the Birmingham Bowl, which I didn't get to make, I was busy, but I think Troy and Duke, especially Troy, was really happy to be there and play it. This had a good run in recent years. The Duke Blue Devils, when you say that, you can't help but see Coach K and see Christian Laettner. But they've been playing some football, and I think those two teams enjoyed it. Duke pulled it out, but then you can find any number of bowl games that, because of the world we live in right now with transfer portal and the coaching carousel, which is only accelerated now that with the money that programs are spending, the patience level, I would say, Rob, 20, 30 years ago, it was a sort of a gentleman's understanding that when you go to the trouble of a search and you hire a head football coach, he deserves 4 or 5 years. And that has been contracted. If you averaged it, I didn't do this, but I'm going by memory. I think it's been contracted not to 2 years. You'll see some firings in 2 years. My goodness, Zach Arnett at Mississippi State, one and done. Yeah. And that sort of proved to all of us that he was actually an interim coach, except and I know why they did. You got to try to recruit and hope it works out. But I think the average is about 3 years now. If he recruits well, 4, and that's why Billy Napier has a very warm seat right now, and it's the SEC schedulers are not helping him on the back end next year, and he's losing recruits. So it depends on the vibe. But now with the coaching carousel, look at some of these games that are played. The players that opt out affects it. I'd hate to be a Vegas odds maker. I'd just say, don't play this one, don't play that one. And then if I find that one team has had a bunch of opt-outs and they're playing with an interim head coach, I'm probably going to take the favorite and lay the points. But it's just gotten weird. So some of those games suck, let's be honest. The fans are about two-thirds, the stadium's 2/3 empty sometimes, and it helps ESPN fill up airtime during the holidays to sell ads. But it's a mixed bag. I do think I don't know about Maryland, but I suspect they're excited to play a helmet logo from the SEC in the Auburn Tigers, and I really believe this. Except for the several players that opted out, which I respect because they have real good prospects in the draft, like Marcus Harris. I have no ill will toward him, but I think this Auburn team, although they went 6-6, is glad to be back in a bowl game, and they want to give. The last time they saw a football game was 4th and 31.
Yeah,
and it didn't end well, and you want to get that bad taste out of your mouth. And by the way, you're going to have to run the ball to win this one, I think, because that's what we've got. And there's some receivers like Javaris Johnson that opted out or they're transferring. So, but you'd like to see Peyton Thorne look competent heading into the spring because he's got all these great new wide receivers coming on board that give Auburn a chance to be a really lethal and balanced attack next year. So, yeah, I'm a little down on the bowl games. I look forward next week or the weeks ahead to talking about really breaking it down with a 12-team playoff. Does it set up to truly make the bowl season interesting again, or is it really just interesting for about 6 or 8 games?
Yeah, you got 44 bowl games this year, 88 teams out of 133 Division I, roughly 65% in the bowl game. You can't give participation trophies; those don't work. And if they don't have enough teams to qualify, they'll even dip down and take a 5-7 team. So even if you win your bowl game at 5-7, you're 6-7. You're still going to have a losing record. That is asinine. Franz Beard called me yesterday afternoon. Had a great talk with him about the deal. And he talked about Florida in the mid or late 60s. They were a 7-3 team. And barely lost to Alabama, who I think won the national championship that year, and did not go to a bowl game. Really good, and like the old days of the NCAA tournament. So I'm with you. Great points. Let's get to topic number 2, and this one. No, okay. I'm just saying you're right on everything you just said, but I love college football. I want to see the eyeballs stay on there, but for the right reasons. So maybe you have to reduce the number of bowl games. Less is more.
Well, and I want to interject before you go on to topic number 2, which is right in front of our face, and it's what almost everyone in college football is the most interested in: the Alabama-Michigan matchup, Hartwell and Saban. With some believing, I don't, some believing that if he ran the table in this playoff 2 games, that Saban would strongly consider riding off. I don't think so. I think he's got his eye on that, getting some distance. He and the great Bear Bryant on the records, the championships and number of wins records. But I do think those of us that are over 40 or 50 years old, contrast that with the Gen Zs. If you're over 40 or 50, then you remember well enough that a lot of years it meant something to be selected to go play in the Cotton Bowl or and it still does on one level. But when the national championship was mythical, the AP and UPI writers voted for it. There were years that were head scratchers about how and sometimes they would have a split title with one team winning the AP, one winning the coaches. And there was sort of collusion in that. They sort of had this understanding, all right, whichever team gets voted by the writers, the AP, then we're going to duck the other way and be fair, and we're going to let another team have the UPI because they didn't vote at the exact same time. It's really just fascinating. We all complained and moaned and groaned that you didn't have a true national champion. But in some ways, I miss a team that has a really good 8-3 record, and they're surging. Their trajectory is great. This Auburn team, as an example, could have been an 8, easily should have been an 8-win team. The Alabama game, and then you don't lose to a New Mexico State. So 8-3 back in the day, and winning a Citrus or Liberty or Cotton Bowl game, people thought of you like, man, that's a great program. They had a great season. You don't hear teams that play in the minor bowls, the non-playoff bowls, being talked about as having a, quote, great season now. So it's the old adage, be careful what you ask for. And what we're asking for now is a 12-team playoff. I think I'm going to be excited about it, but I fully expect some weird unintended consequences.
Doug, we had this discussion on one of the greatest road trips I ever went on. A bunch of us went over to Athens back in '93 when Auburn was heading toward that was the 9th win of the year. And we were going up to Athens on the Atlanta Highway, and there were 5 of us, and my buddy Joe Passantino, a John Carroll High School graduate, and we were talking with him. We were all talking on the way up to Athens, and this discussion came up. What if we go to a playoff, and in the 9th or 10th game, and back then it was only an 11-game season, 11-0, Jim Fife. And the question was brought up, what if in the 9th or 10th game you'd already locked up home field advantage. In the Auburn, Georgia game, in that case, you were pulling starters like the NFL teams will do or NBA teams will do to rest them. That would water down a great rivalry. And that's what you don't want to have. And so I like a bit of trepidation in what you just said. You being a great English major and a wordsmith is we used to talk about in the newsroom, but you're so good with the words, but you're right. I'm excited about the 12-team playoff, but you don't get bonuses at work unless you hit the benchmarks. Not everybody gets a bonus, okay? Sometimes people get their feelings hurt. But you know what? You playing small to make other people around you feel less insecure is BS, okay? Always raise that bar. I love to be around the best salesmen in the office, the best bikers, the best runners, the best riders. It's going to make you better. So I think you're making great points. Casey Goodjohn listening out in Claiborne County, Texas. By the way, day after Christmas, he sent me a great picture. He dropped a beautiful 8-point buck out there in the scrub mesquite land of Texas. And I said, pretty damn, they don't get that big out there, Doug, but they whack them. But Casey Goodjohn, hoorah, 20-year United States Marine. Audrey and I met him down surf fishing in Orange Beach back in September, and he watches the show or listens about every day, but great American. And let's get into about Michigan in the bowl games, because we all can remember a lot of afternoons, the 4:30 iconic start Central Time for the Rose Bowl, and those Big Ten teams just getting bludgeoned by the Pac-10 at the time, now Pac-12, now two-pack or Tupac.
Rob, putting it mildly,
Bad.
I don't enjoy the role. In case I sound like a Crimson Tide apologist, they don't need any help, for God's sake. I mean, on top of the world. In fact, it's almost like because of that, the great coaching job that Saban has done this year, and I've said that repeatedly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to tell the truth, right, Rob?
Yeah.
I think this is a very flawed Alabama team in terms of the roster and some of the things they've had to do to cover up, which is part of coaching. Great coaching is you find your own liabilities. You hope the other team doesn't quickly notice them, and you do some things to not let that translate into losing several games. So
Yeah.
I think it's almost already been proven that this is Saban's greatest coaching job to date, and there are a bunch of good ones.
Sure.
But other years, he had the advantage of either elite quarterback play, and Milroe is deadly, especially with his legs, and recently he's making some great throws. But he's not a Bryce Young. He's not a Tua. He's just not. He might become that next season. But Saban has done it. It sounds silly to say they've got a flawed roster when for several years they ranked 1 or 2 in signing classes. But things happen. Players are misses. They don't work out like their star rating.
Mm-hmm.
And now I guess I look at this Rose Bowl game, Alabama and Michigan, and somebody's going to have to convince me that Vegas does not have the wrong team favored, Rob. I know it's only a couple of points, 1.5, Michigan favored because of their resume this year. But Jim Harbaugh is going to have to prove to me and a bunch of other people, most of whom I see picking Alabama lately. His first year at Michigan, 2015, they had a big bowl win over Florida in the Citrus, 41-7.
Mm-hmm.
He has since had the ignominy of 6 consecutive bowl losses. That includes the arguably embarrassing 51-45 loss to TCU a year ago. That was supposed to be a Michigan team that could really challenge Georgia. I don't think anybody thought anybody could ultimately beat Georgia a year ago. Harbaugh was also demolished by Georgia 34-11. You only put up 11 points in that 2021 playoff, and then smashed by another SEC Alabama 35-16 in that weird 2020 year. So Michigan in general, even before Harbaugh, historically is bad in bowl games. Some of them don't matter, so you can forgive them that the players didn't care. Maybe they didn't beat Ohio State. They didn't win the Big Ten, so they just wanted to mail it in. But Harbaugh has a chance to change that pattern. But until he does, first of all, I don't wager, but I think you just have, I can't construct a coherent argument for Michigan winning this game. What do you think?
I mean, I agree with you. Michigan, prior to playing Ohio State late in the season, the toughest game they played during the year was Rutgers. And look, Penn State's good. You know, they came down and clubbed Auburn badly in Jordan-Hare a year ago, but that was part of the Harsin. That was a canary in the coal mine, one of many flocks of canaries in the coal mine to tell how bad a mess that was. But, you know, Penn State, think about James Franklin, 3-17 in top 10 matchups. And Michigan took care of business. They did what they had to do. I like Harbaugh. I do like him because I know, in my opinion, he's being attacked by Ryan Day in Ohio State, who I think are funding the investigation to try to take him out of the way, okay? Because if you're an Auburn fan, you know what it's like to have a rival that's committed to your extinction 24/7. I mean, that's part of it. But Southern Cal and UCLA are not like that. Michigan and Ohio State, at least there's respect between Auburn and Alabama. But now I think you're right. I think Alabama wins the game. And I've said this all season with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, who will be on here in just a minute from Tider Insider TV. I hope you can stick with us because I think it's Nick Saban's. I think he's going to look back on this like Shug Jordan looked back on the 1972 SEC champion Auburn Tigers. Yes, SEC champions. They were his favorite team he ever coached. They were picked 9th out of 10th in the preseason. This Alabama team was given up for dead after the Texas loss, September 9th. And look what they've done. And don't forget what Kevin Steele has meant to this team and the job the offensive line has done of coming back. And Rodney Orr said it on the show yesterday from Tider Insider. Jaden Roberts, the big guard from Houston, who was third team, got inserted into first team due to some circumstances this season. They've never looked back. But, yeah, I'm with you, Doug, and you're not an apologist. You know what? I think what I respect the most about you, among a lot of things, is, you know, yeah, you're an Auburn guy. You got 3 daughters. 1 went to Bama, 2 went to Auburn, but you tell it like it is. And I do too. And if Auburn people say, well, you're being an apologist, I'm not. You're not. None of us are. It's called journalism. It's called being objective and being fair.
I mean, I don't hide. On the one hand, I'm never going to hide the fact of who I want to have success. We all, unless you're trying to be the sort of faux objective ESPN or Fox Sports analyst, and none of them are really unbiased, but they have to present that aura. And when they're professional, the one I see do it very well is Neuheisel. I think you've had him on the show.
Yes, yes.
And it's well known where he played college ball, and he probably has some favorites. But you got to call balls and strikes. And, you know, once you start doing that, a funny thing happens. You realize your manhood didn't suffer from telling the truth about an arch rival. And the truth is, Alabama, their own fans that are fair would say there was a 15 or 20 year drought before Nick Saban. They had a couple of years that were special. Yeah. And they just could not get out of their own way hiring coaches. And, you know, then just one disaster after another. That played a part in why Tuberville had a 6-year run. Now Auburn finds himself having to fear the thumb heading into the next Iron Bowl in Bryant-Denny, with Alabama having won 4 in a row, 2 of them highly improbable. They overcame a 98% probability of Auburn winning, and I had the pleasure of sitting there in both of those. But that's the nature of this rivalry. I just think that the one word, the one key, if you have to look for it, speed. SEC teams that win it all tend to have, everybody's got speed at the skill positions, and Michigan's got some players. And Michigan better hope they can do what Auburn did, which is find some success on the ground, because if they have to line up back there and let Alabama tee off on them on 3rd and long, it's going to be a problem for them. And so I just think Alabama, on every position in the roster, they have a slight edge in speed, and that usually shows up in guys making plays, having breakaway, explosive plays, getting to the quarterback quicker. And, you know, that's the reason the SEC has been so dominant. Ohio State broke the code back when figured out how to beat Alabama. We'll see if Michigan can do that. I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, they're good, but Alabama's better, and Kevin Steele's defense will show up. That's just what they do. And I think the biggest thing that if you're an Alabama fan is the offensive line's improvement. Look at Jaden Roberts. Look at J.C. Latham. Big difference. All right, topic number 3. The major momentum of Auburn's 24 signing class, and they ain't done yet.
Look, let you start with tipping your hat to the two dominant programs the last, with a few exceptions. Throw a Florida and Ohio State in there. I'm forgetting someone. Clemson had a big run, but for the last 15 years, let's call it, Georgia and Alabama, especially Alabama, are on top of the world, and they, not surprisingly, because they recruit really hard and they've got a great resume to sell to players about putting kids in the NFL and winning titles. But they're 1-2 and well deserved. But how a team that finished 6-6, including a stinker blowout loss to New Mexico State, and some other problems, Freeze's first year, that call into question, if we're honest, exactly how competent an offensive coaching staff we have down there right now. I do think late season Hugh Freeze took over and it looked more coherent. But now, after 6-6 season, Hugh Freeze's vision and the messaging they've done to sell it and the relationship building they've done lands them at a sporty overall seventh ranked 2024 class that includes the two notables on both sides of the ball. Most analysts I've read consider Auburn's linebacker class with Joe Phillips, DeMarcus Riddick, Jamonte Waller. That was a huge flip from Florida.
Yeah.
The one linebacker class at least in the South, maybe in the nation. There are a few teams that will argue that. And at this point, arguably the number one wide receiver class in the SEC, possibly the nation, if they can flip Ryan Williams, the 5-star out of Saraland, who is going to announce and sign in February. And I right now I'd probably give Auburn the edge because it gets in these kids' head. Man, I'm the fifth. This Freeze 5 social media phenomenon. The money's probably about the same with either school. I don't know that for sure, but that would be, yes, he's that good. But it's gonna be very alluring to Ryan Williams to have the excitement of completing that fifth player that makes up the so-called Freeze 5, which is a ridiculous branding. But with these kids, you do what works. And I think Freeze, how many coaches can show up at a house in a minivan, if you didn't see that in the documentary, Rob? The airport rental car was supposed to have an SUV, and Freeze shows up in a mom carpool minivan and signs Perry Thompson.
Well, that's awesome because I remember the Foo Fighters were at the FedEx Forum a few years ago, and Dave Kroll, the lead guy, talked about he rides around in a minivan, doesn't he? he used to be in Nirvana.
Yeah, no, let me get
minivan.
A resolution of mine, Rob. I'm gonna avoid things like don't eat much, because one of your guests, I think, said, "Man, it's the eating season, Thanksgiving and Christmas." And I'm gonna
smell what I'm smelling right now. I'm over here at the cherry farm today, and MJ's cooking something in there, and I'm doing this intermittent fasting till noon. And it's like having Otis Campbell be the bartender, and I'm struggling. I mean, I'm smelling it right now, and it's ridiculous. It's almost food porn. It's ridiculous.
My solution is a simple one. I want to stay grounded all year.
Yeah, stay grounded.
The Bible says, let Lord place a guard at the door of my mouth. Before I take that one Mississippi, two Mississippi, before something comes out of my mouth, and ask myself, is this going to really be ridiculous or unfair or over the top or not substantiated by reason and facts? So I want to stay grounded. And let me say to myself and to the Auburn fam, as we like to be called, this great signing class will be of little value. Ask Texas A&M. and all the money they spent to sign number one classes, historically number one.
Yeah.
If you don't go out and work, every player work their ass off. Coaches coach like they've never coached before. Freeze be willing to make tweaks and changes. Whatever contributed to the head scratchers on offense, like inserting Robbie Ashford on second or third down and then pulling him out. And we wish him well wherever he's going. Then the class will start to mean very little if you're not getting the ball through the air to these wide receivers. And you could even see one of these 4 or 5 great wide receivers lose interest and transfer out in 1 year if they don't feel like somebody's getting the ball to them. So you got to go, take the next step, which is to look better, win games, try the floor's 8-4 regular season. If that's not the floor, then we're not doing something right. And the ceiling can be 9. If you steal one, can be 10 wins with you lose both road games to Georgia and Alabama. There's not another team on the schedule that scares me to death, even in a road game. So that's the next step Freeze has got to make so that the 2025 class is even better.
Yeah, he's got a holiday. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. Gary Harris is on deck. Tide 100.9 WVOA, Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. One of my favorite people. I'm telling you.
He's good.
I'm lucky. I got Gary Harris and Rodney. I'd love to get them on here together like they are on Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m. Central, Tider Insider TV. But we'll take a quick commercial break and be right back. We're going to talk some college football, folks. Hang in there. Be right back.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Yeah, curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
338 Goodman Road, the Vitamin Shop. Justin Ross opened the first location down in South Haven, Mississippi. 3 hours operation Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m., 8 p.m., Sunday, 10:30 a.m., 7 p.m. I go there. I buy shot blocks. I buy goo energy gel for biking, swimming, running, working out. They've got all kinds of probiotics. They got health specialists, nutritionists, healthcare specialists. They actually know what they're doing. Nobody will say, I don't know, I just work here. You're not going to get the guy that's up there playing Dungeons and Dragons with his phone. Dedicated employees. I love these people. Just like I love Gary Harris coming on here, man. This guy's awesome. From over around Anniston, Alabama. Been at Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa for a while. Knows his craft. Really gets after it. Tide 100.9 does a great daily show Monday through Friday, and also Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr, Tuesday night, 6:30 p.m. I suggest you watch it, whether you're a Bama fan or not. Watch it, tune in, we'll talk about it. But Doug, I know you got a question for Gary before you got to go. So this is Doug Dean over in Birmingham, Gary. The AU Doug. And let's get going.
Good morning, Gary. I just want to compliment the great work you did on Rob's show and otherwise this year covering the Crimson Tide. It's sort of the psychology of football coaching. I want to get your take on this. On the one hand, I've been among quite a few people who consider this, even if Saban falls in one of these next two games, I don't think he will. I think there's going to be an Alabama-Texas rematch, and I don't have a pick in that one, not yet anyway. But it's been considered arguably Saban's greatest coaching job in his tenure at Alabama, and there have been some great ones. I don't want to diminish any other one. Meanwhile, Harbaugh, despite their great season and their 1.5 point favorite in this game, Harbaugh has lost 6 straight bowl games since he won one. And so it's just in the air. I don't know how Jim Harbaugh himself could just do some Jedi mind trick to not think about that and figure out what can I do differently. So how would Saban approach the psychology of that dynamic that I'm talking about, in which, frankly, I think a lot of people expect Coach Saban in Alabama to win this one. I'm one of those. On the other hand, is there a risk of, in a bizarre way, sort of taking the number 1 ranked team in the nation just a little bit lightly? Does my question make sense, Gary?
Yeah, it does, Doug. I'll start with Alabama. I think for Saban, the process is just tried and true. It's proven, and I think that he, everything's tweaked through the years, but I think basically the way he approaches these kinds of games has not changed. I hate to say nameless, faceless opponent, because that's not exactly the truth. But at the same time, I think the process that Alabama uses to get ready for this game won't be any different than, any other playoff game that they've been in, or BCS game, or any of these type scenarios. I don't think they make it as much about Michigan as they make it about Alabama and being the best version of themselves. I mean, I really do think that's why Saban has been so successful in the postseason, that he doesn't get hung up on the opponent, or whether or not Michigan has won a bowl game in a long time, or, the fact that they're trying to knock the door down, or any of that. I think he just focuses on, let's be prepared. Let's do everything that we can to be the best that we can be. Let's do our jobs, play the best that we can play. And then the result takes care of itself, whatever that is. He's won most of them, but he hasn't won them all. On the other side for Michigan, I've talked to Reiner Saban, who used to work at AL.com and cover Alabama. He now works for Detroit Free Press and has been covering Michigan for a few years. I've talked to a couple other people up there. I really do think that they feel like, what you said is true, and they're aware of it. But I feel like they think it's their time, and that, the last 2 years, getting into the playoff, getting handled by Georgia a couple years ago, and then really stunned by TCU a year ago, has led them to this point. This is a veteran football team. This is an experienced football team. This is 2 years in a row to be 13-0. And they had a lot of guys come back that could have left. And I just think they feel like, whether it's Alabama or Texas or Washington in the next game, I really do think Michigan feels like it's our time right now. And we're ready. We're prepared. We've learned from the last 2 years. And, I think they're a really confident team. And I think Alabama's a confident team. So, something's got to give. Only one team can win. But I think both teams approach this game with the feeling that if we play our best, that we're going to win. And, when I look at a game, I always say, if both teams play their best, who wins? And that's, to me, the better team. I still think it's Alabama. I'm with you, Doug. But I think Michigan is certainly good enough to win this game, if Alabama doesn't play its best. And so I think we're looking at a fourth quarter game. I think that for Michigan, like I said, they feel like they're going to kick the door down. And for Alabama, I think Nick Saban feels like, we're where we're supposed to be. And despite the struggles early in the year, and I agree with you, I think the job that he did with this team, because it could have gone the other way. I do believe that. I think this was close to going the other way after that South Florida game. But to kind of, go into SEC play, win that Ole Miss game, which is a game that a lot of people thought Ole Miss would win. And then just week to week, they just kept knocking people off. So for them to get to this point, I think it's been a terrific coaching job. And they're such a different team than they were early in the year. Michigan is more like Alabama's been in the past. I mean, Michigan has been good really all year. And I understand the schedule. I don't think it's nearly the schedule that Alabama's played. But, Michigan was good going in, and they've been good the entire time. And so I think it's going to be a tremendous game. But from the Michigan standpoint, I don't think that's one thing I think Harbaugh is really good at. I don't think that the players are thinking about, well, we haven't won a bowl game. Harbaugh's 0-6 in bowl games, and we got, we lost to TCU last year. And, we've had a sign stealing scandal and a letter of notice of allegations and any of that. I think he's got them in a vacuum and in a he keeps them focused on the game. I think all Michigan is concerned with is this game and winning this game. I think that's one area where Harbaugh is really good. I think he kind of likes all this stuff swirling around him, but he keeps that football team in a vacuum.
Gary, and I'll get out of the way real quick. This is more of you would probably have a sense of it. What kind of Alabama contingent of fans do you expect to be in Pasadena? Because, I can understand why fans that aren't multimillionaires would roll the dice and say, I'm going to go to Houston. I'm going to take a chance that we can get by Michigan. Do you think there'll still be 30-40% of the arena that's crimson and white?
I do. Now, listen, there's some reality to what you say. Over the years, Alabama's been was in the BCS game a number of times. Has been in the playoff 8 of 10 times. I'm not saying it gets old, but the shine wears off a little bit. And there have been games where I've heard Alabama fans say, I'm not going to Dallas, or I'm saving it, if they make it to the championship game, or even some others that have just said, hey man, I'm gonna watch it on TV because my budget's tapped. But in this case, with it being the Rose Bowl, and even though Alabama played in the BCS championship game out there, that it was at the Rose Bowl, but it wasn't the Rose Bowl game. Yeah. And then, of course, they played a Rose Bowl in Arlington, Texas, that got moved with all the stuff going on with COVID. But this will be the first time Alabama's played in the Rose Bowl since 1946. So I think that the excitement level for that game, playing Michigan, is, and I've already talked to a lot of people who are either out there or going out there. I think the fan contingent for this game will be strong. Now, if it were somewhere else, maybe not so much, but just because of the history and the tradition and all that goes with it, I think the Alabama crowd will be strong. But no, the pocketbook deal is real, man. I'm telling you, I've seen it. When if you're a fan base that hasn't been in one of these games and you get in one, you're like, man, everybody's going. But when you've done it as much as Alabama has done it, fans have to make tough decisions. But in this case, I think the fan base will be well represented in Pasadena.
Forward, and maybe I can live long enough that I would get to experience a sporty problem like getting tired of going to national championship games.
I didn't say I got tired of it.
New Year to you, Rob and Gary.
Hey, same to you, Doug. Be careful.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Gary, along the lines of what Doug said, one of our guests this past week, now we took off last Friday and Saturday and Monday and Tuesday for Christmas break. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year soon to be. It was pointed out in its vaunted history, Michigan football, they've now won 1,000 games. They've been playing since 1850. Actually, football started November 6th, 1869. Rutgers 6, Princeton 4. But Michigan's won 1,000 games. In all their history, they have 8 Rose Bowl wins. You know what? Alabama has 5. And when Alabama went to the Rose Bowl in 1925 and was down 19-7 in the third quarter, came back and won 20-19.
Changed Southern football.
Yeah, and because the South had basically been emasculated after the war between the states for 60 years. And you go back, every school in the South, the Southern Conference and whatever it was back then, sent letters to Alabama's president wishing them well, saying, you're representing the South and Southern pride, how big a damn deal that was. And why has nobody done a 30 for 30 documentary? Maybe Sidelines will do it on the train ride out there and back.
Well, let me tell you this.
Story.
Since you mentioned it, and, not everybody knows this because it was done about 20 years ago by Public Television, Center for Public Television at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
And because John Forty was still alive, and they interviewed, former players that were alive, way, way back. There's a documentary called Roses of Crimson that ran on public television. And who's the professor at Auburn that's a historian?
Dr. Wayne Flint.
Yeah, Wayne Flint's featured in it. Dr. Wayne Flint's featured in it. John Forney's featured in it. Players from way, way back. Because like I said, it was done in about 2001. It is incredible. It is an hour documentary on everything that you're talking about. The train ride out there, the significance of the game, rare archived film footage, man, of the parade when Alabama got back to Tuscaloosa. And it is going to run I actually suggested this when we were meeting about our Rose Bowl coverage a couple of weeks ago. I said, hey, why don't we find out if we can run that Roses of Crimson documentary on WVUA 23?
Yeah.
And so we got permission. So, and I can't give you the exact dates, but it's going to run during the weekend on WVUA 23. And we've been promoting it on our news, but I'm sure it's going to run. I know it's going to run Sunday night. I think it's going to run Saturday, and it may even run Monday before the game. So that is something, Rob, that exactly what you're talking about. It documents everything to do with that game, all that it did in terms of for football, and also the social significance that, as you mentioned, for the South, because that game, that 26 Rose Bowl, not only was it for Alabama, as you said, it was for the entire southern region of the country was pulling for Alabama. And Washington, as you know, was the huge favorite, and Alabama came back and won that game. And it forever etched Alabama, as Dixie's football pride, as it says in Yay, Alabama, and really put Southern football on the map and changed everything. So there isn't a 30-30, but there is a Roses of Crimson documentary that's going to be running this weekend on WVUA 23.
Yeah, and I mean that's the power of film. I mean, to go see that, because and I've read so much about it, and I'm a history fanatic, and but you go back and when that team got that win, the 8-day train ride back, I mean, people at every train station, thousands, bands playing Dixie and just cheering, and people in tears. I mean, I don't think the average person, and it's hard to put it in the vernacular, understands it. You just talked about it. Would you do us a favor? Text me the time
I'll
that you're going to run that. I'll put that all over the show
because
people need to see it.
Yeah, some of the film footage here is because you know how good a work public television does.
Oh God,
and when they were doing it, they spent. I know it was a project that they probably took a couple of years to complete, and the interviews, and again to see. I haven't watched the whole thing in 20 years. I did watch some clips yesterday, but just seeing these people who are now not with us that are featured in this documentary. But some of that film footage is unbelievable. And you're right that taking the train and like you said, the different stops, and when they got back to Tuscaloosa, man, people climbing up light poles to get a look. It's. I know we're crazy about football today. But when you watch some of this footage, as you're alluding to, Rob, people will say, my gosh, it was even bigger back then. And it was, because like you said, it wasn't just a football game. And, there was no internet. There really wasn't any television. There were a few movies, but this type of entertainment was unbelievable. Yeah. So I'll text you that information.
Yeah. And you know what else? Norman Jetmanson, my friend in Birmingham, and David Cruz over in Oxford, Mississippi, spent 6 years on the documentary that was released late April of 2022. Monday Morning Birmingham Quarterback Club in Birmingham had the big premiere. And that is about Sewannee's 1899 road trip. They were broke. They needed to raise money. They went on the road and played at Texas A&M, at LSU, at Tulane, and at Ole Miss at Crump Stadium in Memphis. At 5 games in 6 days, they won them all. And that game, that season was such a big deal. And they talked about why football was so popular in the South. You'll love this. And they said, James Webb, former U.S. senator, I think, or congressman from up in Virginia, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of the Navy, has written a book. And it'll really explain why Southerners love college football so much. It's called Born Fighting, the history of the Scotch-Irish in America. And it's Andrew Jackson, Ronald Reagan, George Washington. And they said that football, that on that documentary, it's called Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled. And you can buy copies, Sewanee1899unrivaled.org. They said, well, football was, and this was Dr. Woody, a professor at Sewanee, said it was very popular in the South because there was fighting and there was violence and hitting and contact. And the Scotch-Irish Celtic culture in the South just embraced it. And so the one game that they were challenged was when they played Auburn with John Heisman as the coach in 1899 in Montgomery, and the game was called because it got dark and there were duels and guns drawn, and the Sewanee team. So you think fans today are crazy? You're right, Gary. And
So let us know the times because again, it doesn't matter who you're a fan of. And our job, just like with you, you are a professional. I watch you and Rodney. You tell it like it is, but you've got to understand this stuff started a long time ago. And it just keeps getting better, like that great bottle of wine down in the cellar in the Rhine River Valley in France and Germany. Just nothing gets better than college football.
Yeah, it evolves and it changes. And you're talking about the duels and how they would just settle things with pistols back in those days. And, now, I mean, I look back at that, South Alabama, Eastern Michigan cheap shot, but that's mild compared to what they used to do. But yeah, football is part of our culture. And you're right. It was, coming out of the Civil War and, trying to rebuild the South, and then you get into the early 1900s, and I do think there was an inferiority complex for the southern region of the country, and probably rightfully so. And football, college football was a way, and and you get even in through the civil rights era with all the division, and but football on Saturday is something that brought people together, and thankfully eventually it was integrated, and it's brought us together for a long time. But it is the modern game is a lot different. And you're right, it's not nearly as we talk about the injuries and things today, but I don't think it's nearly as dangerous as it was back then. But for Alabama to get back out there to the Rose Bowl, you're right. It's a big part of Alabama's football history, and I think that's why fans are extra excited. As much as for me, I'm not going to the Rose Bowl. My mom's been in the hospital since Thanksgiving, and in fact, we got to move her tomorrow to another facility, and it'd been a lot easier on me if the game had been in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. But we do have somebody out there, and it's going to be exciting.
Well, you're a great son. I mean, I'm blessed to have both of my parents, 89 and 95, and I get calls every day. Boy, you coming by here? We need some milk or some egg bites. What everybody always says is when they're gone, you're going to wish for that call.
That's right.
I'm with you.
That's right.
Let me say another thing, too. I think Alabama on history was the 4th or 5th choice for the Rose Bowl. A lot of schools didn't want to do it, and they did it. I don't think people understand how poor these colleges and universities were. An 8-day train trip. Can you imagine guys would be quitting and saying, I'm opting. I'm not taking the train ride. They would have walked out there for that opportunity. That's why.
Well, it paid dividends. If with Alabama winning that game over Washington, you always wonder in history if Alabama loses that game, maybe it's different. Although obviously Southern football eventually would have because of the passion for it. But that kind of put Alabama on equal, or put the South on equal terms, because as you alluded to, football in the upper Midwest, and of course obviously the northern eastern coast of the United States, and even out west was just it was felt that it was superior. But what time is it, Rob? I need to make sure I get across.
We got 7 minutes till 9.
Okay, I got about 2 more minutes. Okay, so anything else?
Let me ask you this: with your coverage out there, the Tider Insider TV, y'all doing anything special from Pasadena and anything?
No,
different?
With me being here, in fact, we did the show Tuesday night, and then the game's Monday afternoon. So when we do Tider Insider Tuesday, we'll have obviously a complete recap of the game. So we'll know what happened. But we made our predictions this past Tuesday, score predictions. And so, with me not being out there and, no longer doing the Crimson Tide kickoff show, and as we've done in the past, I'll just be here. It'll kind of be normal Tuesday when we do Tider Insider. Although we'll, obviously, if Alabama wins, we'll also start looking ahead to the national championship game in Houston. And if they lose, we'll recap the season.
One other point of interest, 2 of the top 4 players, high school players in the state of California, have signed with Alabama. Julian Sayin, the quarterback out of Carlsbad, California, and Xavier Browne out of Mater D, Mother of God High School in Santa Ana. So 8 of the top 15 players in California have signed with SEC schools. And of the top 10, Oregon signed 3 of them, Alabama 2, and Southern Cal signed 2 of them. But of the top 15, only 2 are going to a California school.
Yeah,
so it's a big deal for Bama.
It's weird too, because Alabama signed 9 players from the state of Alabama, and they signed the 2 that you're talking about plus 1 more. And then the next state, that highest state was California, was tied with 3. So that's how recruiting's changed.
Yeah.
All right, Rob.
Hey, tell them how they can follow you and keep up with your great work. And thanks for everything you do for us. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. Look forward to the coming year, but let them know how to follow you.
Yeah, you follow me on Twitter or X at Gary Harris _WVUA. I have a Gary Harris WVUA 23 Facebook page. You can just search Facebook and Gary Harris WVUA and find it that way. WVUA23.com is the website and Tide109.com. Thank you, Rob.
Hey, you bet. Take care. We'll take a quick commercial break and be right back with more Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you after a quick commercial break. I want to say Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Get out there. They're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. If you're looking for boots, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. Great looking clothes. The stuff you see on Yellowstone, the very popular television show on CBS and Paramount. The wardrobe consultants, Schaefer Outdoors, since 1982, for life, for better. They have Rip's jacket, Beth Dutton. They have her good-looking clothes, dresses. They have women's jeans, women's tops, hats. They've got it all. They have barber clothing, all the barber clothing. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. They have everything. The Filson luggage, Filson hunting jackets, sweaters, vests, shirts, pants. They've got incredible selection. Vask, Hire, Danner hiking boots. They've got the low-cut Danner hiking boots. I'm telling you, I've never worn a low-cut hiking boot like my Danners I got. You literally can run in them, okay? They've got the Devil Dog jeans made by a World War I era United States Marine. They're great fitting jeans. They have Pendleton vests, Pendleton shirts. Again, Schaefer Outdoors, incredible selection. Camouflage duckhead pants, upland pants, and the full selection of duckhead vests, down vests, jackets, blazers, pants, polos, button downs, Ariat, Wrangler. They've got them all. Dolce Vita boots. They've got it all. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, 111 North Center Street. Again, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Check them out, hewlettandunn.com. Want to say something, too, about Rumble Boxing. Rumble Boxing Gym. Check them out, Rumble Boxing, on our website. Open Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. These classes, 48 people in the classrooms, in the classes, and you're doing calisthenics, burpees, star jacks, jumping jacks, push-ups, dips, planks, dumbbell work, and then you're hitting the punching bags. Keep in mind, they're 15 3-minute segments. It's all together in 45 minutes, which not ironically, it's the length of a prize fight. Can you imagine two big fellas going out there for 45 minutes punching each other? Rumble Boxing Gym, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, located across the street from Walgreens. Again, open on Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. till noon. Check them out, Rumble Boxing Gym, on our website. You'll be glad that you did. Bring in the coach, Matt Dean. Matt, gonna be I can tell you one thing. We're going to be getting into a whole lot of coverage when John Hartwell joins us here in a minute, but maybe you know the answer to this question, Matt, because a lot of people were asking me last night, and that is this 14-day order by a West Virginia court judge that players that transferred. Now, we know the rule is the first time you transfer, you can play immediately. The second time, unless you're graduated, you have to sit a year. There's questions now. If players transfer, are they eligible to play right away in their new team's bowl game? And if they are, yes or no, does that affect their eligibility for the next year? This was a topic of discussion around Beer 30 and Jack 90 at the Cherry Farm in front of the big fireplace last night. I don't know an answer. So maybe you or John Hartwell can answer that question.
Well, good morning, guys, and I hope you had a great Christmas with your families. I'm going to let John tackle most of it, but my 2 cents is, even if I could get an athlete that could play in a bowl game from someone else, why would I want to do that to my team, splinter my group? We haven't had them all year. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I know there's some legislation that, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, that has addressed the ability to go back in the portal and have instant eligibility. But I've also heard, John, and I may be wrong on this, that the NCAA says that gets reversed, then there's no recourse. It's almost like, sorry for trying. Is that accurate, John?
Yeah, we're kind of in a little bit of a limbo situation right now. But, I think most coaches, most institutions are operating under the assumption or the belief right now, and probably rightfully so, that the NCAA is litigation adverse, maybe the most politically correct way I can say that, but I think they're so concerned about whatever they do. There's a group of attorneys who are going to jump on board and get a class action suit one way or the other. But with this injunction that was granted, that we're operating under right now, what it caught was a lot of student athletes who are making a 4-4-4 transfer. And when I say 4, I refer to a 4-year school, as opposed to going from junior college, which is a 2-year school, a 2-4-4 transfer. But what this is doing, previously, you could have a one-time jump from a 4-year institution to another 4-year institution, but you couldn't do it a second time without sitting out. And what this temporary injunction is saying, hey, you can go to a third 4-year institution, i.e. you could go from Southern Cal to Ohio State to Florida now without having to sit a year at the University of Florida, which would be your third school. So that has opened up a whole new floodgate, if you will, in terms of another intricacy with the transfer portal.
All right, so here it is. Here's the question. I mean, and this was brought up last night, and I know I'm throwing a lot at y'all. Again, when you get on sidelines, it's like you live in the median on I-95. You got to pull out of your driveway doing about 100. And I've had some coffee this morning, no Bailey's, of course. But that was brought up last night. Is if like the University of Memphis had a basketball player Penny Hardaway had brought in. Matt, I'm sure you're familiar with this, and he was able to, the other day he got the activation, like, okay, he can play now. But what if a player were to transfer from ULM or from, another school to a school, any school that's playing in a bowl, and he got there and the next day, could he go to practice and play in that bowl 3 days later? That's the question people are asking. And does that affect their eligibility for next year?
Yeah, I think it one, they could transfer there and go practice. I don't think they could play at a bowl because they've already played at another institution.
Correct.
You can't play at 2 institutions in one playing season. But what they would be able to do is go in and practice, do any of that stuff, and then be eligible immediately next fall, which previously, again, it's that third jump or the second jump that triggers it to the third school. Right now, as it plays out with this injunction, is that you can do a 4-year institution to 4-year institution to a third 4-year institution jump without having to sit a year. I know that's clear as mud, but it is a pretty significant change from where we were 10 days ago.
And Rob, also remember this. The reason you see more of stuff like this in basketball, two things. First of all, basketball is a 2-semester sport. So that person, though they transferred, would not really be able to play games till after the calendar year ended from first semester. And secondly, from an acclimation standpoint, John knows this. He played Division I basketball. It's a lot easier to assimilate a basketball transfer into a team environment than a football player. It's just two different sports, two different beasts. And you wouldn't see it in football because it's a 1-semester sport. And like John said, they've used up their year of eligibility in that sport on the team they're in. Now, another thing, I think the biggest thing we got to get fixed, guys, if we're going to continue the transfer portal, which I think we are, we got to figure out the window. You can't have guys that are technically supposed to be playing for national championships in institutions because they're forced to, because the window is such. And I think that's a really easy fixable problem. Lane Kiffin talked about it yesterday. I mean, you would never see the NFL. He described it as you'd never see the NFL have free agency in the middle of their season. And he's right. You wait till the season's over to fix that.
Well, the bottom line is, the first time you transfer, and you're both athletic directors, you're eligible immediately, grades pending and all like that. You got to get all that stuff squared away. And I think, and I'm sitting here texting with Chuck Oliver right now, the king of college football in the South, and he's over in Atlanta. He's going to be on the show with us tomorrow. He said he's actually off for a couple of days, and it's hard to get him on, but we're going to get into this discussion because everybody right now, you look at the portal, everybody's trying to, we had this discussion yesterday. You got the coaches. Okay, how do they enjoy? I mean, I know they make a lot of money, but that doesn't mean they can't spend time with their families and have Christmas, But you got to manage bowl practices. You got to do signing day, December 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And you've also got, you've got so much that you got to deal with. You got to deal with the portal. And that window ends, January 3rd or January 5th, because the players have to get enrolled at the new school that they're going to. So it is, look, y'all, I'm throwing this red meat out there for y'all into the Shark Tank, but somebody tackle that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of intricacies to it, but again, a lot of football staffs, I'm not saying us at ULM, but there are a lot of football staffs out there that have 50 to 60 staff members just in football.
Yes.
So to say, we're playing in a bowl game and we've got, transfer portal and we've got recruiting and all that. There are a lot of institutions out there and the higher resourced ones who have plenty of staff members to cover all of this. So it's probably more of a disadvantage to those staffs that, beyond the 10 on the field assistant coaches don't have, but maybe 4 or 5 other total personnel in the football office. So, and they're, it doesn't matter what business you're in. I'll go back to my CPA days, from basically February 15th to April 15th, the CPA doesn't get that time off. So I'm not going to get so hung up in that, we've got to change this and we're overworked. And because you may hear them say they're overworked, you're not hearing them say they're underpaid. But I'll stay off that soapbox. Hey, but I think really pertinent to this conversation is something we talked about last week. I do believe that for these New Year's Six bowls to continue to be relevant and trying to make sure that the vast majority of the student athletes who are supposed to participate play in those bowl games, we're going to have to do something from an NIL perspective as it relates to some type of compensation or incentive playing in the bowl games. And philosophically, do I agree with that? No, I don't, because I think it's a tremendous reward at the end of the season to get to go to a nice bowl game. You get all these gifts, you get all of that stuff. But in today's world that we're in, of NIL. I think we're going to have to do something to, and I hate to say this, to incentivize players, student athletes, to play in bowl games. Again, my personal philosophy, I'll leave that out of that, but I think we're going to have to do that to protect the integrity of these bowl games. A second point, and then I'll shut up for a while. I probably watched more bowl games here over the last 4 or 5 days. I probably watched more football, especially outside of ULM football, than I've watched all year. I continue to believe, and you see all these stories, a legitimate Power 5 quarterback on the NIL market is worth $1 million to $1.5 million or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, when you see what Jason Bean did for Kansas the other night, when you look at what Miller Moss did for SC last night, hey, if you don't have a legitimate signal caller, somebody who is your trigger guy back there, it's tough in today's world of high-level college football to win. And I think those two guys are great examples of that.
Well, this is it. Like, I was talking to a coach, an SEC assistant, anonymously in the last week, and he said that story out there were 60 to 90 quarterbacks in the portal, and there was a story that they were getting an average of $2 million each in NIL. He said, I'm not buying that. Now, there are going to be some that do it, but your quarterback, you're right. He's the guy that touches the ball on every snap. And you can have a great wide receiver or a great running back, but when you got a great quarterback, he's typically going to be, that debate came up when Cam Newton was at Auburn. Pat Dye was asked, who's the greatest player you've ever seen? He said, well, everybody thought he would default to Bo, but he said, Cam touches the ball on every snap. So whatever you got to pay for the quarterback, the free market will allow you to do it. And that's the thing about it. But man, have I seen some great quarterback play. And this guy for Texas A&M last night, kind of came out of nowhere. And I was getting a lot of stuff from some A&M fans that watched the show that were texting me. He looked athletic. And Kyler Murray, was 5'8". But I don't know how big this guy was, but quarterback play, my God, if you don't have it, it's like trying to have a restaurant without being able to serve food. It's impossible. I've never seen quarterback at more of a premium than it is now, guys. It's never been like this.
To John's point, I watched some of that USC game too last night, John. And if you're a fan base, you got to be excited after watching what Miller Moss did. Heck, I think it was 6 touchdown passes. And everybody thought that Louisville was going to boat race him. Well, that didn't happen. And then the first thing that I heard after that performance, John, which is just kind of to your point in this world we live in, is, with USC looking at, I think they committed Will Howard from Kansas State, another quarterback. Does Moss go in the portal now that he's got some tape if he doesn't like the fact they brought in 2 other guys? It's craziness, yeah. But think about that position. In the NFL, who's the highest paid player in a football team? Without question, it's the quarterback. So if you're going to invest in a player on your football team, you better have that signal caller, like John said. And to look at what happened at A&M last night, very first play, Jalen Henderson, who was their starter because Max Johnson was hurt in the year and Max Johnson went in the portal. But what happens? First play, Jalen Henderson gets hurt. Marcel Reed comes in from the Nashville area and really has a solid football game. Think about this. You weren't even thinking of playing a snap, and all of a sudden you're in the starting role after play 1. I thought the young man played admirably. But the biggest thing I saw with that game last night, A&M, just knowing some history about A&M the last few years and their guys that have left them in the portal, Mike Elko's got some work to do, especially on the back end of that defense. They gave up a lot of yards last night in the passing game, and there's a lot of work to do. When you have a coaching change like they did, and a lot of players leave, it can go one or two ways. You look at what John's going right now. There's a lot of excitement, momentum coming off a season where John made a change, or the school made a change. Now there's excitement. The reverse is happening at A&M. They're bringing a new football coach because they failed miserably. I mean, John, I don't know the answer to this question, but if you extended Jimbo Fisher as an AD and you cost the school an extra $30 million on the buyout, you keep your job, man, you got a pretty good thing going.
Yeah.
I think you're muted, John.
Yeah.
Had to get them out. But I was afraid I was going to throw up a lob there, and Bob was going to launch into who let the dogs out, but I'm glad he didn't. But you know, here's what I think you're seeing some of at A&M, and rightfully so. I think there's some fan apathy there, and you know, when you rewind 2 years ago, when the portal, or excuse me, NIL first became available, and the amount of money that they invested in NIL, the amount of money that was invested in Jimbo Fisher's contract and the assistants pool and all of those things, you know, what do they have to show for it? Again, I hate that the young man got hurt on the first play of the game last night, but they invested all of that money, and they go 7-6 yesterday. Right. And you look at what they've done over the last 3 years. So I think there's a portion of that fan base that when they come passing the hat around, whether it's for NIL or for, you know, paying new coaches or any of that, there's going to be some apathy there. And that happens across the country. It goes to show you no different than the NFL. You know, it's not the old Yankees model. It's not, hey, whoever pays the most wins. You've got to be strategic in how you invest, whether it's in NIL, in your coaches' salaries, in facilities, all of those things. It's just not the golden rule. Whoever, you know, has the most gold rules. You've got to be strategic and smart in how you invest.
Well, and I'll tell you, I've got a lot of people that ask me this question about A&M, and I think it's perfectly clear. You can spend all the money in the world. And as Franz Beard always says, only God and the Longhorns have more money than the Aggies. And I got a lot of Aggies that watch this show, listen to this show. And last night I was communicating with several of them, and they're just going, my wife says, I just get too upset. I let this stuff bother me. I'm like, well, you've got plenty of company, I can assure you. But to go 7-6, all right, that's terrible. I mean, and you there's no way you can say, but that's why when I've talked to people off the record about NIL, you better make sure these guys that you're getting to come to your school, that you're paying these NIL deals, really want to be there, because they will check out on you mentally in a hurry if it's all about a bag of money. I mean, I think Deion Sanders has been fun for college football, getting people to watch Pac-12 games, but in a sense, it's sort of like people slowing down on the side of the highway to see a bad car wreck, because Colorado sucks. I mean, they won 4 games. The real story in college football about the turnaround, the Lazarus Award, should have gone to that guy that took over for Pat Fitzgerald up at Northwestern. They won 7 or 8 games. I think the academic standards at Northwestern are pretty damn stringent. So I think it's very, we're in a diametrically opposing situation here. I mean, you've got it's pay for play is all it is. And the guys are there, name, image, and likeness. It should be based on what you do. You don't get a bonus in my world unless you hit your numbers. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Okay. You don't get a bonus because you had good intentions. And that's where I bet these A&M people now, when they go back to them and try to get more money from them, they're going to go, whoa, you're going to start getting the alligator arms, when the check comes. Yeah. Watch that. And it's not just at A&M, it's all over the country, gentlemen.
Yeah. And I think that brings another point to light there, Rob, is that today's and going forward, I think your most successful coaches, and I hate to flip from college football to NBA basketball,
not at all.
But the Pat
free
Rileys
speech is alive and well here.
The Phil Jacksons and the Pat Rileys of the world are going to be those coaches who are the most successful because, yeah, they know the game, but they're also psychologists, philosophers. It's about melding a team to that. You've got all different pay grades, and quite frankly, that's what you got now in NIL. And hey, how can I get all of these diverse individuals? And I'm not talking about socioeconomic or ethnic or sexual preference, any of that. I'm talking about in terms of how much money they're getting in their pocket from an NIL perspective. How can I get all of these individuals, 100, whatever it may be, 85 scholarship guys, to all bond together for the same common good, knowing that their bank accounts are all going to have different amounts in them. And I think that's really, really important going forward.
Well, the one thing that I see on a sales floor with 40 or 50 guys in my experience is, some guys get bonuses, some guys don't get them, but all you got to do is look around on the floor when people are working or not working, and you know who's earned it, and you know why you're not getting it if you're not getting it, okay? Hard work works. It's that simple. Casey Goodjohn out in Claiborne County, Texas. NIL stays in account until athletes graduate. If they transfer, program gets half. I'm going to guess that he's talking about Texas A&M because Casey is an Aggie. He's got a daughter at College Station. That's interesting. Okay. That the program would keep half the money because, again, Matt, God, if I'm the president of a college, I want both of y'all running my athletic program because you've got business skills, business acumen. John, accounting alone, hell, half the CEOs in the Fortune 500, they don't have a degree in philosophy or the humanities. Not that those are worthless degrees, but they're CPAs. Okay. And I would want y'all, because, there's an old saying when someone says money's not an object on this house I'm going to build at the lake, I guarantee you it'll be the number one stumbling block. It'll be the entire issue. But when you bring money in to a school, Matt and John, you want someone who's going to take that money and put it, man, when somebody invests money with me, I take that stuff seriously, 110%. You got to, because if they say, well, I don't really care if I lose money, you damn right you do. I do, because I keep score. And the money managers that we hire and the portfolio managers that we hire are graded quarterly, okay, sequentially. And if they don't do well, they're fired. I think it's more important that you got guys like you and Matt in your roles as ADs or associate ADs who can manage the money that donors bring in. Because if you can show them a legitimate ROI, they're coming back, Matt. I mean, the families at Rhodes that support. Hell, Rhodes has 1,900 students and an endowment of over $400 million. Ain't many schools like that in America, Matt.
And we still don't have enough money.
Yeah.
So here's what's
that.
interesting. Here's what's interesting. And I think we've talked about this. I've had the good fortune to be on this show every Thursday with John for the majority of the last 2 years. This was never supposed to be an inducement. It was never. If you look at the legality, everyone has broken the law.
They have.
And we've allowed this to kind of go downstream now. It's out of control. I can't control my kayak. I'm flying on the rocks. Okay. And then best idea we've talked about the last 2 weeks, John and I both talked about this. Okay. Can we incentivize like a bonus for, let's say, 25% of your deal to go play in that bowl game? But here's the problem. How the hell do you do that? I don't know the legalities of that in the system that's supposed to be. I'm supposed to show up, find myself a nice local corporate sponsor. I'm signing autographs at Bob's Bank every Thursday after practice. Well, that's not going on. Some small cases are surely like that. This is a scam. This is a sham. It's out of control. We cannot fix it. We need Hartwell to be the commissioner of this whole damn mess, and he can get it out of it. But no one's willing to Chip Kelly had it right. Chip Kelly had it right. Let's take, the top 64 Power 5, the next 64 Group of 5, whatever, and let's have a playoff system, and let's not screw around with making Pac-12 volleyball play Arizona or UCLA Rutgers. What are we doing?
Yeah.
It's crazy. You should not lose the Pac-12. And my favorite announcer, Bill Walton, I no longer get to hear him say the Conference of Champions. I mean, come on. What are we doing? Sorry.
No. We've been saying that on this show for the last year, since Oregon and Washington and Southern Cal and UCLA. And going to the Big Ten.
This last thing.
Yeah.
The coaches that are successful now have a recruiting plan for 4-year students, and they have a transfer portal plan. And that's what hurt Jimbo Fisher. Though his staff was recruiting at a high level for 4-year kids, what did they do in the portal? Hardly anything. And now it's biting him in the backside.
Yeah. And if you're not engaging and vetting players that are in the portal, you're crazy. I mean, you don't sell a stock unless you got a better one to buy. Now you can go to cash, but cash doesn't pay the bills. Yeah. Okay. You don't get much return on it. Short-term cash positions. I'll say this, like when you're looking, and we've been saying this on this show for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Why are they going to subject Southern Cal at Rutgers on a Wednesday night volleyball game? I mean, remember, they are student athletes. Jim Cherry, when you went to college, you had to go to class, didn't you? But most of the time here at the Cherry Farm. But you think about it. Having gone to Catholic schools, Christian Brothers High School in Memphis, Brother Adrian S. Powers, Fratre Scholarum, Brother Stephen O'Malley, some of the finest men that have ever walked this earth. You had to, if you walked by a piece of trash on campus and you did not pick up and take pride in where you went to school, guess what you did after school? You cleaned the entire parking lot. You would never, and I got to Auburn first couple of weeks. I'd show up to class with a bag of trash, a little bag of trash, picking up stuff on the way. It's ingrained in me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you, keep the conferences as they are. I totally agree with you, and I love watching late night basketball with Bill Walton. Y'all know it. Y'all know we all do it. We all stay up past our bedtime. I mean, we used to be in the days when late night TV was funny, when David Letterman was on, and Brother Theodore, and Larry Bud Melman, and Biff. I mean, that was funny. Well, you watch Bill Walton. What's he going to do now? People say, well, I don't like him. What do you not like about Bill Walton? The guy he's a genius. His parents were both librarians. The big redhead. I mean, how can you not, he's opinionated. What? He's smart. And he makes you uncomfortable sometimes because he tells you what he thinks. I'm going to miss that. I mean, I guess he'll still do stuff with the Big Ten, won't he? But he won't call it the Conference of Champions. 556 national championships for the Pac-12 schools in 108 years. Just going to throw that out the window. John Hartwell, I hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back. We're going to get into this stuff. I've got the Sidelines Band. Going to play a little bit of music in the bump, and we'll be right back with John Hartwell, AD at ULM, and Matt Dean, Associate AD, Rhodes College, the most beautiful inner city college in America. Be right back.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
All right, great commentary from one of our listeners down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Bill Walton, he's stoned, which is great. I mean, he maybe he is when he's watching the games, but all I remember as a young lad in 1973, Memphis State at the time, Memphis State University played UCLA. My dad went to the game. He was in St. Louis on a business meeting, and the people he was with said, "Hey, we got floor tickets. You want to go?" He goes, "Yeah." And the big redhead was 21 of 22. I've never seen anything like it since. We may never see anything like it for another 50 years, but I love him. He'll be talking about, John Hartwell, not only is he an amazing power forward for Arizona State University, in his spare time, he's a classical pianist, a virtual Renaissance man, and a virtuoso. And his favorite book that he likes to read is Aesop's Fables. By the way, Audrey and I, Christmas Eve, were in Costco in Memphis, and we bought a copy of Aesop's Fables. There are 487 of Aesop's Fables. Do y'all remember reading Aesop's Fables? I'm going to tell you what, one of the best ones in there is the ass, the ape, and the mole. And the ass is saying, well, everyone makes fun of me because I got big floppy ears and a goofy looking tail. And the ape says, I wish I had a tail like the fox. And the mole says, be grateful for what you have. He said, because I'm mostly deaf and blind, and I don't have much of a tail, and I have to worry about you big goofballs stepping on me and squashing me. Aesop's Fables. I recommend that everyone read the book. There's some great parables in there. And, reading is like lifting weights with the brain. All right, John, getting hyped up on this paint thinner and coffee and stuff I'm drinking, but let's talk about it. The Matt's right. Do you think in 2 or 3 years, or will it even take that long, after all this coast to coast traveling, and when your teams are getting bogged down because they're playing at Rutgers or whatever, there's a snowstorm on the East Coast and you're stuck for 3 or 4 or 5 days, you can't get out, and then you got to wait till they have to take the Greyhound bus ride from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it takes a month with 1,000 stops along the way. That I will not be surprised if we don't see the Pac-12 come back in 2 or 3 years. And what we talked about earlier, what Chip Kelly, we've been saying for years, they put football in this separate deal, and then all the conferences go back to their traditional footprint.
Yeah, and I think you're already seeing components of that. One of the really interesting developments over the last week or so as it relates to the Pac-2 that are remaining of the Pac-12 is they had already announced a scheduling coalition between Washington State, Oregon State, and the Mountain West Conference in football only. So for next year, you will see that. But in addition to that, 3 or 4 days later, they announced a deal basically with all the sports other than football and baseball between Oregon State and Washington State and the West Coast Conference. And a lot of people, I know most of our listeners are Southeast folks. You may say, West Coast Conference, what's that? Well, it's pretty darn good basketball, especially on the men's side. Gonzaga, University of San Francisco, St. Mary's. There are some very high quality teams in that league, not only in men's basketball, but in a lot of the Olympic sports as well. But, kind of this splintered approach, if you will, for those two schools trying to salvage what's going on speaks back to what you're saying about, hey, let's keep it regional in terms of most of our travel. And those two schools are able to do that. So I do think it's going to be interesting, 3 or 4 years out, and in the next iteration of these broadcast rights deals with these leagues, does the Southern Cal Rutgers matchup or the UCLA Rutgers matchup demand enough money to overcome the additional cost, the additional wear and tear on, everybody talks about student athlete welfare. Well, I'm not sure that you can make the argument student athlete welfare for, like you said, it's not the football trips, because at most, you have 6 road trips in football. And a lot of times, in the Power 5 now, you're seeing they're only playing their 4 or 5 league games away from home. So most of their non-conference games are at home. So it's, is it really about student athlete welfare? No, it's really not. It's about 2 things, dollars and cents.
Yes.
But what the pushback of that is going to be, what the next iteration of those broadcast rights deals, are they really going to mean that many more millions of dollars? Because what you're going to have, and you already have this, is a lot of those Olympic sports are saying, well, hey, if football or men's or women's basketball gets to charter cross country, why are we not chartering cross country?
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, it's still a 5-hour flight if you're going, east to west, or a 4-hour flight if you're going west to east, which is still a long time. But if you're having to do it commercially, that LAX to LaGuardia is probably not a real fun ride when you're going with a whole bunch of other people. So I think you're going to see, you're already seeing pushback on it. Now, what that results in, the next 2 or 3 years will tell on that.
Yeah. I mean, see, that's your mind is a CPA, you're trained, you did public accounting. You worked for a beer distributorship in Charleston, correct?
Yeah.
Was it Anheuser-Busch? Which one was it?
Miller and Coors.
Coors.
We did not carry Hams. Sorry.
I was going to ask you, don't Miller and Coors have the rights to Hams beer?
I think they do now. They did not at that time, but they do now. So,
but what an opportunity for America's finest Pilsner. I got to say, Hams beer, a 30 rack at the Walmarts in Wynne, Arkansas, $15.98 for that quality beer like that. It's the beer you've been looking for since 1865, born in the land of sky blue waters. Matt Dean, let me tell you what, I got to ask you this. As a Midwesterner, some of the best beers ever. Give me your top 3 Midwestern beers that maybe people in the Southeastern footprint, and we're all over because of the interweb, as Al Gore calls it, but give me your top 3 Midwestern beers that maybe people aren't familiar with that they should buy at their local grocer.
When I was a young lad, economically driven,
yes,
we drank a lot of Milwaukee's Best up in the state of Iowa. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Milwaukee's Best, absolutely.
I just got to be honest with you guys. It's probably why I'm so messed up today.
Hey, we called it Milwaukee's Beast.
It's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
So when I got a little bit more money in my pocket, I became I love Budweiser. I'll still go out to a bar. I don't drink a lot, but if I get a domestic, I am just the King fan. I don't want Bud Light, especially after this last year, the marketing plan.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Give me the King. Give me that Budweiser label bottle. I don't even need a frosty glass, man. I am a Budweiser fan, probably because for a long time I had to settle for Milwaukee Best.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course there was Meister Browne,
yes.
And the Schmidt Sports Pack that had the ducks on it during hunting season. It was a big deal. But Midwestern beers are pretty iconic. You got to love them.
Well, and being a Chicago sports fan too, Old Style Light was another one that resonated in the city of Chicago. I'm a White Sox fan, but a lot of my good friends are Cubs fans, and just the whole era of Harry Carey. A lot of people don't realize this. They think of Harry Carey with the Cubs. Man, in the 60s, Harry Carey was with the Cardinals, and my dad had this big 78-45 record that I unfortunately scratched as a kid. It was all the highlights of Harry Carey in the St. Louis World Series. Dude, that would be worth so much money right now. I screwed it up. But then in 1974, when I started watching baseball at the ripe age of 7 years old, Harry Carey and Jimmy Pearsall, who is just one of the Looney Tunes out there, Google him, they were doing games with the Chicago White Sox. And really, to this day, the reason I start becoming a White Sox fan on the old WSNS, that's where I started watching baseball. And Harry Carey has got me interested in the Chicago White Sox.
Well, when Harry Carey would be about the third inning, Harry Carey here with Steve Stone. Want to say hello to all the shut-ins out there watching the Cubs play on WGN. How about the sisters at St. Cecilia's Convent there in Kankakee, Illinois? And he would just be rolling, and Steve Stone was always the straight man, and Harry Carey here. And, God, he wore those ashtrays stuck together. He called glasses, you could look at an eclipse wearing those damn things. They were truly amazing glasses. But, I mean, old style. No, I do have it on good record, on good accord. Shep Proudfoot will vouch for it. Remember him from the movie Fargo? Don't piss that guy off. That Hamm's was the official beer at Wrigley Field for a long time. So,
I think you're right.
I mean, I'm just saying that, gentlemen, as you see the sign behind me. But let's get back into this. Man, y'all are making so much sense. I don't want to, I got to, but here's the question. Casey Goodman, in reference to the A&M game, why do coaches leave players on the field after multiple mistakes? And you can apply that to any game, but maybe you don't have anybody better behind them. Matt, John, somebody, anybody, Bueller?
Well, last night, I don't know if you heard the reference on the broadcast. If you're watching the A&M game, John, I think they're down to they were short 30 scholarship players. So last night, I know why they left them on the field. They didn't have another option.
Yeah,
they were down to 3 scholarship wide receivers, and one of them got dinged up in the first quarter. So, it's a product of the portal in some of these bowl games. It's really sad too, guys, because John, I know next year, if you guys go 8-4, the momentum you'll have going to a bowl game is incredible. And I don't ever want to lose that. I don't want to ever lose that about college football, but I am worried with all that we've done to screw it up, even though we've made it better in some regards. I still want that team out there to be recognized. I got I have friends on the Rice staff. I was watching Rice Texas State yesterday.
Yeah, I was
all
too.
These connections, and obviously there's the gambling element. But the reality of the situation is you want these kids to be rewarded for a good season, and that's what the true bowl system has always been about.
Yeah.
Well, you make a great point. Whether it's the Rice Texas A&M game, or I know we talked a little bit about Jason Bean for Kansas earlier, the Kansas UNLV game. Those are 2 games right there. All 4 of those teams wanted to be there. They were happy to be there. They had not tasted, the success in the last 10 years like a lot of other programs have. Yeah. And like you said, those are programs that are on a positive trajectory that, hey, they use the extra, practice time and all of those things to get better and to really build towards the 2024 season. So those are the positives that we have to keep, in the bowl season. But look on the flip side. I mean, who knows who's going to be playing in that Florida State Georgia game and who's really going to care? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see that game and how that game plays out, because between, players opting out, guys going in the transfer portal. I know the quarterback at Florida State who played quite a bit the last 3 or 4 games. He's in the transfer portal. It will be interesting to see that game. And then the whole deal with, Florida State, Speaking of opting out of the ACC and filing suit against the ACC and the ACC returning that favor, that game's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, let me say this. One of our viewers down in Fort Lauderdale, Wesley Duncan, just sent a picture in my fridge right now, Milwaukee's best light. So that's pretty damn impressive. But no, you know what? Here's the thing. People have become so damn cynical. They everything, oh, that's not what it is. No, good. I don't like cynics. I just don't like it. I mean, I love these games. You know what I took away from watching Texas State and Rice play First Responder Bowl was that no player from either side quit. No. You can use the term opt out if you want to. They all played. Now, well, what does that game matter? Look, they all matter. If these were just regular season games, it'd be different. People think because they're bowl games, they're exhibitions. They are games. You're wearing and repping, as they say, your brand. And you should have pride and personal devotion to that school that has awarded you a scholarship. You don't deserve a scholarship. You've got to earn it. And you're representing that university. And they're walk-ons. Let me tell you something. There are walk-ons who get opportunities in these bowl games now. And talking about Georgia and Florida State, there are 16 players when I checked the other day from Georgia in the portal. 5 of them are 5 stars. 8 of them are 4 stars. And 3 of them are 3 stars. Can you imagine if a school signed a class like that? It'd be one of the top 2 or 3 classes in the country. That's just what they got going out the door. And then last week in the early signing period, Georgia signed the #1 recruiting class in the country again. But all these games matter. Every one of them do. Because, these are the people, these young men playing football. They're going to get jobs. They're going to go into the workforce. You better teach them that what they do matters. There are consequences. You do a half-assed job on something, do you want your accountant to do a half-assed job on your tax return? You want your brain surgeon to do a half-assed job when he does brain surgery on you? How about the heart surgeon to do a half-assed job on your double bypass? I just did one artery, forget the other one. You better be looking ahead to what this stuff means. I mean, Eddie Robinson III is listening to the show right now over in Atlanta. He listens every day. Had him on the show back in the fall. His grandfather, Eddie Robinson, used to say, football teaches the lessons of life. I used to watch the Eddie Robinson show in Memphis on Sunday mornings. He'd say, you get knocked down, you get up. You get knocked down again, you get back up. But young man, when you quit getting back up after you've been knocked down, you are through. So get up and keep fighting. I love what Eddie Robinson, his grandfather, Eddie Robinson, said. And, he was close friends with Coach Bryant and Coach Jordan, all these coaches. They all love one another because they stood for what's right. And you think these bowl games are insignificant? They matter. John, next year, y'all go 8-4 in the regular season, you're going to be doing backflips. And I know your coach will be coming to you probably with his agent, and there may be talk of a contract extension, but that's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Hey, it beats the alternative for sure.
That's right.
I would a whole lot rather be having to do periodic coaching searches because our coaches have had success and have been have moved on to opportunities, bigger paychecks that made sense for them from a family and a professional standpoint than to have to do the opposite and help them out the door because they haven't performed. Hey, as we talk about important games, Rob, and I know we're running out of time here, I think we ought to do a little bit of roundtable on these 2 semifinal games.
Yeah.
Coming up on Monday and get I want the Swami Matt Dean. I want Matt Dean's take on those 2 games.
Yeah, let's let her rip, man.
You want me to go first, John? I'll go first.
Knock it out.
Okay, so I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm using it as an analogy. Last night, before I turned on the SC Louisville game. I've obviously watched Pac-12 football the whole year, right? So I didn't know who Miller Moss was at all. And USC played a lot of younger guys last night. Louisville was in the ACC championship game, won 10 games, played Florida State tough in the title game, albeit Florida State had their third-string quarterback in there. And basically, they couldn't be stopped offensively by Louisville, right? And how does that translate to what I'm about to tell you? Well, I think a lot of people have undersold the Pac-12 the whole year, when I've been trying to tell you they're pretty good. I think Washington and Texas is one of the most entertaining games of the year. I think Sarkisian's an elite play caller. I think they have two very good defensive linemen that will limit Washington's running game. But I do think Washington has 3 NFL caliber wide receivers. Michael Penix is protected by the offensive line that just won the Joe Moore Award. That means something here, guys. I think Washington wins Texas. Now let's go to Bama, Michigan.
Wow. Okay.
Let's go Bama, Michigan. Are you telling me I'm going to give Nick Saban a month to prepare for anybody? I take Saban over Harbaugh. I think it's a low-scoring affair. I think it's physical. I think Alabama wins a close game against Michigan. John, you go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'll start with Alabama, Michigan, and I know this has gone under the radar screen a little bit, but it's just one of those mind games that Saban is able to play. His hire of George Hilo a couple of weeks ago. So George Hilo was a defensive coach, on the field coach for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan for 3 years. Left this past summer. And how about this? So he's been doing some consulting things. I know George because George was a special teams walk-on at Ole Miss when I was there. Went to the Bowl School in Jacksonville. Great guy. Yeah. But I'm telling you, that hire is strategic because he knows, spending 3 years on that Michigan staff with Harbaugh, he knows the ins and outs of it. I look for Alabama to win as well. On that other game, and I'll tell you honestly, I have been in the Texas camp on this for the last couple of weeks. I am shifting because I think I agree with Rob. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I'm going to still stick with Texas, though, and I'm going to say we're going to have a rematch of the game back in September in Tuscaloosa between Texas and Alabama for a national championship.
You know, Washington has 13 fifth-year seniors, 13 sixth-year seniors. I don't know how many seventh and eighth-year seniors, but they got a lot of veteran players that are big, physically and mentally tough. I like Texas because Bo Davis is the best defensive line coach. He and Rodney Garner at Tennessee, those are the two best coaches in college football. And that's why Alabama, Texas, the first match, Texas won. They dominated the line of scrimmage. That was the key in that game. I like Texas to win that one. Alabama, Michigan, what I like is I like Harbaugh as a coach. And if you ask any coach off the record, they're like, man, we do whatever we've got to do, whatever we can get away with to gain an advantage against an opponent. Again, I personally think Ryan Day at Ohio State is behind all this stuff to get Jim Harbaugh out of the way. But I'm going to tell you something about Matt's team, Iowa and Tennessee. We had Steve Hogan from Florida Citrus Sports on the show a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to tell you, Iowa, you are going to have to show up and play a full 60 to beat those guys. They're like trying to beat a Hydra, you know? I mean, it's whack-a-mole. They're relentless. They get every ounce of talent. I had a coach tell me a couple of weeks ago, longtime SEC coach tell me, I hate that word potential because that means that's talent you've got and you're not putting forth the effort. He goes, it just drives me crazy. But both of y'all are coaches. These playoff games next year, it's going to be even more fun.
Yeah.
It's like Yancey Porter said on the show last week, Ole Miss is smelling blood. And they just brought in Walter Nolan, big defensive tackle. You know, you think about John Bryant Vincent, your coach, new football coach at ULM. Man, I was listening to you reel off his accomplishments last Thursday on Sidelines. This guy's a hell of a coach. I mean, he's got the high school relations, the college. He's worked his way up. You know, he wasn't born on home plate and thought he hit a grand slam. It's going to be fun to watch this guy play and work out and see the staff he gets. But in no time, he had the 4th or 5th ranked recruiting class out of 14 in the Sun Belt. What's he going to be able to do with a year to do this? That's what I see. That's a deep discount value stock that pays a 4 3/4 dividend in a bear market. I'll buy that all day and on Sundays. I'll buy it every day of the week.
Yeah, no doubt. We're excited about Bryant being on board. Like I said, had about 30 signees last week in signing day, and we've got another wave coming up here in January before the February signing date.
Yeah.
But hey, guys, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I know this is our last show of the calendar year. What a pleasure it is to share this hour with you guys every Thursday. Very knowledgeable sports folks, but even more important, better people. And I'm just blessed to be able to get to spend this time with you guys, and wishing you guys and your families and all of our listeners out there Happy New Year. And hopefully 2024 is healthy and prosperous and your best years yet.
Absolutely ditto on everything you said. We can't do it without you. It's not just one person. Pat Sullivan's Heisman speech, it's an entire group. You've got to have a great team around you, and that's what we're blessed to have, great sponsors, great listeners and viewers. So absolutely agree. Look forward to next year having you back on, which is next Thursday, having you back on at 8:57 a.m. Central to be prompt. But Matt, this has been a blast. I mean, and there's so much going on. And we try every day to solve all the world's problems, but we're getting there. And I think the takeaway from today is, you're right. It's hard work works. Structure works. Both of y'all are coaches. And you know what? Every school, there's a lot of subplots going on there, but you got a school that's getting to a bowl game next year that goes 8-4, that was, won 3 games, 4 games the year before. Their fans are going to travel in mass. What's the greatest thing you can give people is hope, and that's what you and hard work and a plan. Matt, you can do it.
I just want to echo John's sentiments, man. It's been a pleasure. I really look forward to this hour every week, and obviously, John, you and I will have some conflicts because of the work we do sometimes. But
yeah,
we're not on here maybe all the time or as much as we'd like to be. But I'll make an early prediction. Just hearing those, if I just hired a football coach and he was able to get me number 4 out of 14 teams in recruiting class in that period of time, I'm going to say you guys are going to have a lot of success. Bowl game next year, maybe hire the coach a year in the league. I need to get down there for a game sometime and watch that product when my team's on the road. Because as you know, one of the things that we do is, football, those 6 or 7 times a year, 5 or whatever. We're pretty busy those days. But Rob, man, you've grown this to a tremendous product. I think we need to keep reaching out to Ham's Beer for more corporate sponsorship in the future. Right. Yes. Just a thought, man, because we're always bringing them up. Let's get it done. But you guys have a happy New Year, and I hope your families are blessed as you are as well in the remainder of this holiday season.
Absolutely,
hey, Rob,
and
one more comment. Speaking of Ham's Beer, I see him just popping up down there at the bottom. Maury Gaston. You've got a lot of loyal listeners out there. I'd say he would get my vote as listener of the year. So the least you could do is put him a 6-pack of hams in the mail, sending it to Birmingham to him.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's a mechanical engineer. He's one of my board of advisors. And like my dad, I mean, they catch everything. They go back and listen to you can listen to us live or later on the podcast world, wherever you get your podcast. But you're right. I've known Maury 41 years. Look at him like an older brother. Truth broker. You ask him a question, he's going to give you an honest answer. But no, look, that's what we love about Sidelines. Free speech is alive and well. That's what we're here to do. And you know what? We'll do it again tomorrow morning. Chuck Oliver, the king of college football in the South, will join us at 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. To kick things off, we'll have the Texas Riders, Ken Capps, Bo Carter, William Halliday, and more. Until then, remember, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We don't have time for complaining. Don't let other people walk through your mind with their dirty feet. We'll see you tomorrow. Happy New Year. We're out of here.